So, hi, welcome everybody to Heal with the Real. Heal with the Real is about domestic abuse and how we move through any trauma that we may have received from the domestic abuse. Heal with the Real is interviewing women that have gone through domestic abuse to become strong survivors. And this month it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so it's such an important month for me and for many other women that have had lived experience of domestic abuse. And it all started with my book, Heal with the Real. Heal with the Real was about my transformational journey to my best self, I would say. And in the back of the book is all the self-help techniques that I personally use to transform. But today's guest, I've got an amazing special guest today. So Lisa Kaye Bell, she's the CEO of Soundproofbox. And I'm going to hand over to her to say a little bit about what Soundproofbox is and a little bit about her story. So over to you, Lisa.
Okay, so I'm CEO of Soundproofbox, as Amanda's just said. At Soundproofbox, we run a number of projects in schools and workplaces. Our latest project is a theatre in education forum theatre piece. So we go in with a team of actors with an immersive theatre production that it's called Red Flags, and we teach teens about coercive control. They have the opportunity to stop and start the action, talk about what language patterns they're seeing from the perpetrator. They also talk about some of the healthy language patterns that they could be replaced with. So it's a creative project, and it's teaching teens about coercive control and what's kind of right and wrong in a situation, in a relationship. One of the things the reasons I set that up is I believe that prevention's better than cure. If we can educate teens early on, both boys and girls, on right and wrong in relationships, then it's better for when they get into sort of adulthood that they recognize these things.
Absolutely, I completely agree. There was something out from Women's Aid before the month of October, which kind of updated us on the figures for domestic abuse for this year alone. And, the services are just inundated, and they're not able to support the women. So projects like yours that can do that intervention, which, like you say, is so important, before they get to these unhealthy relationships, it is so important. So amazing. Your project and what you're doing is absolutely crucial. So talk us through a little bit about the play and what happens in there.
Okay, so the play has 2 actors. And we have an audience of teens up to about 50 kids. I currently act as facilitator. And what happens is we take the teens on a journey from a teen couple meeting at a party. They go to the cinema and they start dating. And along the way, we start to input subtle signs of coercion. So even in the very first meeting, the perpetrator puts his hand on the girl's hand and covering her hand. He then starts to talk about other girls. He's using language patterns that are starting to control. And it kind of ends up where the perpetrator has his hands round the throat of the victim. All the way along, the teen audience get a chance to stop the action. I facilitate and I say, okay, so what's happening here? Why is that wrong? What would you expect to see in return? So it's an education piece, and we're educating them as we go along. And the reason I did that is a young family member of mine said, don't go into school with a PowerPoint. No one wants to see an old lady with a PowerPoint. Do something that's a bit edgy, a little bit immersive, and actually that we can interact with. Another part of the show is that we have something called hot seating. So I don't know if you're familiar with hot seating, but the audience get to interview the characters, so to get inside their heads. So we interview the perpetrator and we interview the victim. Through me, I I do what's called breaking the fourth wall. So I am the bit between the action on stage and the audience. An audience member will put up, and I have one here, a red flag. So they've all got these, and they'll say, look, that's a red flag. And then we'll say, okay, should we get inside the head of the perpetrator? What's going on here? So we interview him. And then we do the same with the victim. And the victim quite often is making excuses, saying that they really like them, and it's just, and playing down actually what's happening here, which is what tends to happen in coercive relationships. Yeah, that's the show, really.
Wow. And how many schools currently are you delivering that to, and what are your hopes to, because when we spoke earlier, you know, you said that your end goal was to deliver it UK wide, with teams dotted around the UK, delivering that to schools. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. So we've done a few pilots at the moment. So we've got some lottery funding to do a few pilots. I am talking at the moment to local colleges and schools in West Yorkshire. We also have an investor plan. So there's going to be some investment in this from businesses. And the plan is to take it out UK wide. That is the 2023 plan. The 2024 and beyond plan is to take this globally. This is not unique to the UK. It's not a topic that's unique to the UK. It's a topic that is worldwide, and I support women and some men as well across the globe, in Australia, in America, in India, in South Africa. So this has legs to go bigger and grander than the UK. So yeah, that's
wow.
And it's 13 plus, so it's aimed at sort of teens 13 plus upwards. Because that's, as an organisation, that's where we believe, you know, we can start to educate teens around relationships. Any younger than that, it's probably too young. Any older than that, then, you know, they're already starting to get into some sets around relationships.
Yeah. Wow. You know, we need more people like you that can do that early intervention, because it is so important. The average person in a coercive relationship lasts for around 6 years. That is the average. You know, some can be lifelong, but the after effects can be lifelong as well, can't they? I mean, do you want to tell me a little bit about your background and why, you know, you're so passionate about doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about it. I've been in a couple of coercive relationships. I'm not going to go into massive details today about that. But I do have a real passion for it, having experienced it myself, having supported other people around me. And I think for me, the key 3 things that someone who's going through a coercive, controlling relationship is, they want to be listened to, they want to be believed, and they don't want to be judged. And they're the 3 things that every single victim has in their head. And you also have a thing about victim and survivor. So I would say the word survivor, and I think, you know, I'm a survivor. However, when you're dealing with the general public, if you use the word survivor, there's a tendency for people to say, well, you've survived it now, you don't need our help. So I will interchangeably use the word victim and survivor. So anything you ever hear or see from me, I will use those terms interchangeably, depending on the audience that we're trying to reach.
Sure. And you're going to be one of the speakers in the summit that we're doing on the 19th of October. Now, over the past year, since I've been doing Heal with the Real, I've interviewed a variety of women in all different circumstances that have all been in coercive relationships, and they're all coming to speak at this event. And Lisa, you've given your time to come and talk at the event around what you do as well. There needs to be more awareness around this subject for women to understand unhealthy relationships, because even for me 2 years ago, even though I'd been in a domestic abusive relationship previously, 12 years ago now, I found myself in a narcissistic relationship more recently, and the two were very, very different, very different. And because the narcissistic relationship was more coercive and He was a covert narcissist, and he was very clever.
So it's the networks that they create around you.
He was very clever, and from the outside, you know, and you know, he to everybody else around was amazing, you know, nice, this great guy that looked brilliant, was a bit of a DJ, but he, you know, he had an underlying narcissistic personality disorder, which I didn't know about. And you know, I didn't even know what narcissism was until a few years ago. So I just went and did my research, because I knew that I'd been ghosted for 2 weeks. I knew I'd been in a domestic abusive relationship before, but because the narcissistic one was very different, now I look back, I can see the red flags, but at the time I didn't see those red flags. And I think it's just so important, isn't it, for us to raise awareness for other women.
I think it's also the awareness of the support network as well, family, friends, and understanding that, because that is where a covert narcissist will get in. They will infiltrate friendship groups, they'll infiltrate support functions, doctors, schools, judges, you name it, in order to protect their own ego or their own behaviours getting out. So I think the more we can educate people on the periphery, the better it is for those victims, and they're not so in isolation. Not being believed is probably the biggest compounding problem with someone going through through narcissistic abuse or a coercive controlling situation, because often it gets played down, or they're a nice person. I've seen that, oh, they're a nice person, or they're attractive, or and we attach these tags to people that all of a sudden it normalizes it, it makes it okay, because they're not, you know, they're not nasty, they're not evil in the eyes of everybody else. So the more we can educate other people on these covert behaviors, the better. And doing that at a really early age is what Soundproofbox is about.
That's amazing. I mean, it's just incredible, your work, and you know, definitely more awareness needs to be out there with the tools that you can use, because I just didn't know what to do when I was in that situation where I was ghosted. I was just like, right, what do I do? You know, I don't know how to move forward. I don't know how to move out of this, and I really didn't. And I think what it was is I never understood healthy relationships, because I'd never given myself that chance to just not be in a relationship, not be with anybody, and just love myself. I think the inner work is the most important part of healing.
Yeah, and at Soundproofbox we have Survivor Hub, which is a resources, Zoom calls with people who are experiencing this. We do need a bit more investment in that, actually. The workplace is really important. Quite often, if you're working and you're in that type of relationship, work is a sanctuary. But, you know, you go into work and you starting to be anxious and stressed. A mental health situation, you know, a domestic abuse situation can manifest as a mental health problem. So increased stress, hypervigilance, feeling really uncomfortable, productivity goes down. Now, you know, one of the areas other than the education piece is we go into workplaces and deliver presentations to support HR managers, mental health first aiders in being able to support victims of coercive control. And knowing what to say. You know, I can remember someone saying, is that still going on? Yeah. Years, it could go for years, lifetimes, as you said.
Well, yeah, you know, from when I discovered that I was in this narcissistic relationship, it brought up the domestic abuse from the past. So not only was I dealing with that situation and feeling the lowest of the low, because I really did think this man was my forever partner, you know, in my head we were together forever, and you know, it wasn't to be, and I was heartbroken. But you know, I'm thankful now. I'm thankful for what it's brought for me. It's made me change. But yeah, the two relationships are so different, so different.
Yeah, and I mean, a violent relationship is different to a pure coercive one, but you can't have violence without coercion. So they're both, you know, coercion and violence go hand in hand, but violence and coercion don't go hand in hand. You know, you can have coercion without violence, but you can't have violence without coercion. So I always start with the coercive piece, because that will support anybody across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it also brought for me, I knew I'd never healed from the domestic abuse from many years ago, you know, so often it lays dormant and you don't even know, and you don't even know why you're choosing the wrong people in your life, you know. But it's just because you've got you know, you lose all your self-worth and confidence, don't you, after any abuse?
I think for me, psychoeducation, so, you know, understanding the psyche of perpetrators, but also understanding your own psyche and that of people around you is really kind of a starting point. And I read you know, Lisa Romano in America does loads about narcissistic abuse. I've watched loads of her videos. And if I have people come to me, I say, go and watch this because this will make sense to you, or read this article here. Because as soon as that little switch turns in someone's head, it's like, that's what I'm going through. Yeah. I get it now.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny you should say about Lisa Romano, because she was the first person that I came across on YouTube, and I write about her in my book, actually. Yeah. You know, I just went, what do I do if somebody ghosts me? And she popped up, codependency and empath. And I was just like, oh my God. And that's exactly, you know, what you just said. It just, something just went ding, this light bulb in my head. Right, I now know, I now understand you know, the penny dropped completely, and I knew I had to get out and go to my friends.
Well, I had family saying to me, I don't get it, I don't understand it. So I wrote a document. I wrote a document on what to do, language patterns, all these sort of things. And then I turned it into a document that's useful for HR people. So I turned what I'd originally started to write down for my family out of frustration into actually something that workplaces could use to support victims.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty much what happened with my book. During my healing, I just started journaling. That was part of my process, was journaling, because for me journaling is so cathartic, and looking at what we're grateful for me. So I just started journaling what I'm grateful for. And that journaling ended up becoming my book, you know, and I just journaled, and then it actually just poured out. And I call it a page dump for me, you know, but writing and healing is something that is so powerful for me. And that's why I teach other women, you know, the power of rewriting your story.
Yeah. And I write a regular blog, so I've written 90 blogs, and I've got a book out called Writing the Wrongs as well, which is similar. It was all the blogs that I put together and accumulated it into a book. I thought I'd had a breakdown, and I hadn't. I'd just been gaslit.
Yeah.
Thinking I had again.
And what is gaslighting, Lisa, for people that don't know?
So it's where your realities kind of change. So where somebody puts something in your mind, it's like brainwashing somebody basically into believing that something is true that's not true, or you're just changing someone's reality of a situation.
Yeah, and then you think you're going mad. You start to believe that you're going mad. Oh, he must be right, you know, and you kind of then second guessing yourself all the time, aren't you?
It might not necessarily be words, it could be action. So for example, one of the ladies that I support, her ex-husband was a window fitter, and they weren't living together anymore. And she came home and she discovered, because she'd got some cameras up in the house, that he'd been removing the windows in the house, moving things around, and then putting the windows back in, so that when she got home from work, she thought that she was going crazy because there were things moving around the house.
Wow. Yeah, so
that's an action of gaslighting, but it's just about changing someone's reality and perception. But not only that, you can compound that by gaslighting the people who support you as well. And it's usually done subtly, so it's like the two truths and a lie. If you hide a lie behind two truths, then you're more likely to believe the lie. And that's how gaslighting kind of works.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny you should say that, because something like that happened to me. I'd gone out to the shops and I came back, and my side tap on my drive had been turned on full blast, and there'd been a bag of cement dumped inside my kitchen door. And so when I got home, like, my driveway was flooded, and there was this bag of cement in my house. I was just like, what? And I'd actually got cameras by this point, so it was all on camera, thankfully, but for a long time it wasn't, you know.
Enlisting other people in that, including children. So there's another lady that I support who this child had come home with a key ring with their initial on, and the child had said, I need a key for the house, and the person I support said, no you don't, you're only 7, you don't need a key for this house. And then the keys went missing. The person I support had come home from work and all the lights were on in the house, and she had to change all the locks because the child had unbeknowingly just gone and taken the keys, and because they'd been enlisted in this whole narrative around they need to have keys in case they need some clothes when that person's out. So yeah, lengths that, I mean, quite often it's subtle stuff, but big things like that as well, the lengths that these people will go to create coercion and control in people's lives. It's just about fear and power.
Yeah. Tell me, Lisa, what's a typical day like for you? Do you have a special routine, or do you do something to, because I know for my day, I have specific things that I do before I even start my day. You know, I fill up my own cup, and that's my you know, I always make sure I do that before the start of any day. So what would be your typical day look like?
I do have a gratitude journal. So talking about your gratitude journal, I bought one the other week, and I've started writing in that all the things I've got to be grateful for. Usually around about lunchtime, I do take a quick lunch break, but I always have a half an hour meditation. So I meditate at lunchtime for half an hour every single day, and that just recharges my batteries, because I do get drained. And then I go to bed at night with a deep hypnosis meditation as well. So that's my self-care. If I do have enough energy, I will go to the gym, but that's few and far between at the moment. But I have put it in my plan to do more of that. But I do a lot of I've got lots of crystals now. I've become the crystal lady. So I have lots of healing crystals that I stuff down my bra, and and when I'm meditating, I kind of connect with those. I think I've become a little bit more spiritual, or is it that I've just become more self-aware? I'm more aware of me, my body, and connecting to myself rather than living in the external world. You know, I've just been in Dublin all weekend talking about coercive control at a conference, and I come back and I'm like drained because I've spent 4 days with lots of other people, which was great while I was there. I just need to reconnect and re-energize, and the meditation and the crystals and all that stuff helps me with that.
Yeah, I love meditating. I go to sleep with the meditation on. So quite often the great thing about meditation is you can take it to bed, but your subconscious is still aware. So even if you're asleep, your subconscious is still taking all that information in whilst you're asleep. So it's you know, there's so much power in meditation. And I think you're right, you know, what you said about I don't think it is that you get more spiritual. I think it is that you learn mindfulness and learn that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you have to fill your own cup first, you know, before you give anything to anybody else. You know, you just can't help others unless your cup's full.
Healing from narcissistic abuse or coercive control is an inside job. I wrote a blog about it, how it is an inside job. You have to heal yourself, and you have to dig deep, and it's not comfortable to start with.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go to depths that you've never gone to before, go back to your childhood, go back to every friendship and relationship you had, and unpick that, and then just discard it and allow it just to go, and go, right, well, that's happened. I'm here today. All that was about getting me to where I am today. And I, you know, this word journey is used so much on X Factor and stuff, and I actually take the mickey out of it because it's overused. But it is a bit of a journey. Well, I call it I don't call it a journey. I call it it's a tour. It's not a journey, it's a tour, because you bounce from one thing to another. You don't go on a linear route on this journey. You go from one place to another, to another, to another, to eventually you piece it all together and go, that's what I'm here to do. That's why I'm here. That's why, you know, and I've come to this realization that as a child, I always did theatre. Then I lost interest with it in my 20s, went in worked training development in corporate world, then experienced some pretty bad stuff, then went off bouncing around doing bits of things. Now I'm at a stage where I sat and set up Soundproofbox, and I'm literally bit of theatre, bit of workplace education, bit of understanding about toxic relationships and coercive control. Boom, there you go. That's what I do.
Great. So there's loads going off for you, really, isn't there? You've got a lot going on, but that's good, I think, because I think you need to keep yourself busy. And I think when you've found your passion, you know, something that you can just put your heart and soul into, it doesn't feel like work for me.
Yeah, doesn't drain me, whereas a 9-to-5 does.
Yeah. And I did the same. You know, I left my 9-to-5 in February and went on to start my own business, and I've never looked back, to be honest. You know, it was one of the best decisions that I think I made. Just going back to something that you quickly said, forgiveness for me was a really major thing. And when not forgiving the people that were the abusers, but it's about forgiving yourself. You know, it's all those times that you're talking about the traumas with your friends, if these, you know, when you're really digging deep and you're going back, it's just about forgiveness. Because if you're holding on to all those traumas of the past, then you'll never evolve. You will just stay in the same place, because this nerve in your, you know, your vagus nerve is there to keep you safe. And sometimes it can be, you know, it's an automatic thing from a trauma in the past. It'll recognize that, because the bad things always stick to our memories more than the good. And you know, this nerve comes up and goes, whoa, well, we recognize that as a trauma from before, we best just not go there or do that or whatever. And then you just stay in that same place and you never evolve and you never move forward. And I think once you can step into that fear and go, do you know what, I don't care whether, you know, I'm going to do it, whatever, and I don't care about the shame anymore, and I don't care about the fear, and I'm letting the self-blame and the guilt and all that be put behind me. It's freeing, isn't it? It's just so freeing.
Yeah, I think you get to a stage where, and for me, my forgiveness has been, I was meant to go through this because I was meant to help other people. So there was a situation on Monday where there's another stage of something going on, and I was like, okay, it's just part of my life path, because if I don't experience that, how can I support the people out there who are going through it and maybe can't cope with this? You know, I'm meant to go through this because I'm meant to support other people. So that's part of the part of the forgiveness is, all right, thank you for my life journey, thank you for letting me go through all this stuff, because that's where I'm at now. And it's, yeah, I'm forgiving myself, really. I'm not forgiving anybody that's wronged me or done anything in the past. I'm just saying I'm okay, and I'm quite proud of what I do and where I am and what I'm going to be doing moving forward. So yeah.
And you just become more resilient, don't you? You become a stronger person when you start understanding. I think for me, mindset was such a big thing, you know, my mindset, and understanding that we can control our mind. You know, because often whatever we think about, we'll go and do. So if we're purposely thinking about something, so like you mentioned earlier, you know, your meditation, we're going to do a meditation and we're purposely thinking about something during that meditation, our body will naturally follow and go and do whatever we've been thinking about. So it is very powerful, the mind.
Yeah, and actually a lot of I mean, I had hair loss, my hair was falling out, and it does manifest itself in physical things. You know, I work with people who've got skin conditions as a result of increased and prolonged stress and anxiety due to domestic abuse. There are people who I've got a friend who's got an autoimmunity disorder as a result of that. It can manifest itself. Fibromyalgia is a really key one as well, that can manifest as a result of extreme stress and anxiety.
Yeah. What would you say to anybody that is wanting to leave their abuser and they don't know where to go or what to do?
What's your plan? First thing I always say is, what's your plan? You can't just leave. Leaving's the most dangerous time. And actually, people will return up to 7 times before they truly leave. So it's, what's the plan? And I can remember ringing Samaritans, and they have a very similar thing when they're talking about suicide. And they ask you what your plan is. They ask you, because by talking through the plan, it either deters you or it becomes more real. In my case, it deterred me from there. But from a domestic abuse perspective, sometimes it becomes real, and then the reality of that plan is something they can work towards. But I always say, what's your plan? What are you going to do about money? Have you thought about where you're going to go? And what if they try and track you down? So we're thinking about all these things in a very logical, practical way, rather than an emotional way.
And your support circle as well, that's just really important, isn't it? You know, that's critical in having a plan, isn't it, of who is in that circle that's your support.
And do you trust them as well? Because sometimes, you know, you have this concept of what I mentioned earlier, flying monkeys, where they've been enlisted by the abuser to kind of spy and compound the abuse further. I usually start with family. If people have got a good family network that they trust, then that's a brilliant starting point. If they haven't, then we'll start to look at wider family, friends, people's, you know, work colleagues, anyone sat on the periphery. And I always ask, do they know the abuser? If they don't, it's brilliant, because it's easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if you've got anything else you want to add, but I've really, really enjoyed spending, you know, the past half hour with you, Lisa, you know, talking about what you do. It's just absolutely incredible what you do. Have you got any final thoughts before we go that you want to say?
No, just that if anyone wants to get hold of us from sort of an education, or they want to get involved as a volunteer, we are soundproofbox.org. And we're always encouraging people to come and work with us as volunteers, or we will be running some workshops as well from a theatre perspective in next sort of 6 months. So yeah, soundproofbox.org, that's us. And
if there's any investors out there, get in touch with Lisa. You know, she is looking for anybody to invest in her program, her school program, which is so vital for prevention. So yeah, if there's anybody out there that wants to invest in the program, team brands would be great, because they're a great sponsorship opportunity. But yeah, soundproofbox.org. Amazing. Thank you. Do come on the 19th of October. So it's 19th of October, it's 3 p.m. till 8 p.m, which is GMT time, or 10 till 3 p.m. over the pond, which is the EST time. And also, we're on Clubhouse, on the club Inspire Nation. So please join us. We've got 19 incredible women speakers all coming to tell their story of how they went through trauma to triumph and are now living their best lives, or going on to live their best lives. So come and share the stage, or the listening in the audience. And Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll look forward to hearing more about Soundproof Box in the future. Thank you so much. Bye.